Hi all and welcome to another week of the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams and we've got a show for you. We have intel that's fairly positive and a few op-ed pieces, one of which one of the members asked for on synths, so look forward to that. And a whole heap of news and something from Kevin Annett also. So it's fairly packed tonight, and we'll get down to it. Let's start with some emails and links for the show. I know people are still struggling to get on MeWe, but if you if you keep trying to put in WeMe, then you're not going to find the link. But it has been difficult for some reason for people to get on. But we're all there. And the email for the show, if you want to send in questions for the show, if you don't want to participate on the page of the Facebook page or the MeWe page, you can send in questions to truth.honor.and.integrity@gmail.com. And the link for the show, so listen live, or the archive versions, is www.spreaker.com/user/8955881. Now we have a website that, for those of you who are new to this show, called thinkdifferent.thepeoplesclub.org. And there's a range of articles on self-empowerment and chakras and all kinds of energy center stuff, and the archives of all the shows. You can also listen live there, and there's a section called Must Listen To Shows. If you listen to them in the order they've been put in, you'll quickly get the essence of what this show's all about, where we've come from, and where we're going also. So that's all available on thinkdifferent.thepeoplesclub.org. So we have the Facebook social media alternative at MeWe.com. If you are struggling to get on there, please either copy and paste the link off Facebook, which is at the top of every show, pinned show page, or send an email to truth.honor.and.integrity@gmail.com. And we also have the People's Club donation website link. That's everything about the foundation on there. I'm hoping to do a piece detailing what that's all about, a video, when I get time, which is not always available. And that's at thepeoplesclub.org, so you can go to there. Sunday. You must remember that in America the clocks go forward this weekend. And we'll be on, that's me and Kim, Miss Manor, on the OYM show this coming Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So look forward to that. And but remember, the clocks go forward this weekend in America. So you don't want to miss that. Let's get into this first before somebody asked me to put up an announcement. And so I'm going to read it out. It's one of the members. And she's calling, and I think we should all perhaps support it, for a worldwide boycott of YouTube, Facebook, Twitter and Google on April the 1st. If we collectively do and not use any of their services that day, they will lose millions in revenue. And we can show them the real power the people have. You can always use DuckDuckGo as an alternative for Google search, and DTube as an alternative for YouTube. Also, it's mentioned an alternative for Twitter is Gab, G-A-B. And that's something, it's just one day. Maybe we should all look at that and remind them it's we that have the power, not them. We've just forgotten. So, thanks for that message, and I hope everyone supports it. Oh, the intel. Oh my word, the intel. It goes on and on. But first, we'll get into the news points. And LL Bean has now decided to jump on the bandwagon, and it's probably a good move. In fact, I think it is a good move, without wishing to be seen as a bit fascist. But it's all about responsibility. Well, LL Bean this week became the latest retailer to announce that it will no longer sell guns or ammunition to customers younger than 21. I think that's fair enough. I would maybe even increase it to 25. We're not always in control of our brains at that age. I know I wasn't. And maybe 25 is a better age. But anyway, that's what LL Bean, and this is in response to, from one consumer asking the outdoors retailer to change its policy. And the Maine-based retailer replied late Thursday, in the wake of this shooting, we have reviewed our policy on firearms and will no longer be selling guns or ammunition to anyone under the age of 21. Now this is the fourth at the time, there may be more since, high-profile retailers to change its policy on gun sales to young customers in the wake of the Parkland, Florida high school shooting, allegedly, last month. North Korea. Kim Jong-un has this week hosted a dinner for senior South Korean delegates. This is important. And the first time that officials from Seoul have met the young leader since he took office back in 2011. And the South Korean President's office confirmed the meeting shortly after the delegates' arrival last Monday. And it was a 10-member team, which is in Pyongyang, for talks aimed at restarting dialogue between the North and the US. And relations between the Koreas have warmed following last month's Olympics. Now, in what was quite clearly an unprecedented move, the South Korean delegation, which includes two ministerial-level envoys, the intelligence chief Soo Hoon and National Security Advisor Chung Eui-yong. I'm getting good at these foreign pronunciations. The North Korean state radio earlier said that the delegation had met at the airport by Ri Son-gwon, the North Korea reunification chief. I'll say that again. The North Korea reunification chief. Oops. That's just upset one of the listeners saying oops. Never mind. Who led talks in the weeks before the Winter Olympics, and during the 2-day visit, the South Korean group will focus on establishing conditions for talks aimed at getting rid of the North's nuclear weapons, as well as dialogue between the US and Pyongyang. Now, for those of you with longer memories and don't suffer from nightly memory wipe syndrome, it was forecasted in this show over 12 months ago that the North and South Korea will recombine. The impact of that will be enormous on the cabal, because the cabal control South Korea. So now the heat is on in that region. It won't be the last, and it isn't the last. The sales of energy drinks to children, long overdue, under 16, have been banned in most major UK supermarkets amid concerns about high level of sugar and caffeine. The retailers Boots also joined the supermarkets such as Asda, Waitrose, Tesco and the Co-op in introducing the new rule. Retailers will limit sale of energy drinks containing more than 150 milligrams of caffeine per litre to under 16s. The co-op went on record and said it recognised the growing concern about consumption of energy drinks amongst children. Seems they're rather slow learners. They've only just recognised. Oh dear. Hopefully the next stage will see an end and a ban of all the diet soda range. It's worse than the original diet, really. There's another poison. And it seems they're under fire again. I think it's 27 countries that have banned Monsanto now. Well, it's now reaching the US. Claims that the active ingredient in the widely used weed killer called Roundup, there'll be more Roundups later, can cause cancer, have been evaluated by international agencies, the US and foreign regulators, and the product's manufacturer, agribusiness giant Monsanto. And what's happened now is a federal judge in San Francisco is conducting his own review during an unusual set of court hearings that began last Monday. Now, this particular court setting has big stakes for Monsanto and hundreds of farmers and others who have sued the company. The US District Judge Vince Chiabra will spend a week hearing from experts to help decide whether there is a valid scientific evidence to support the lawsuit's claims that exposure to Roundup can cause non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, amongst other things. And the judge is presiding over more than 300 lawsuits against Monsanto by cancer victims and their families who say the company long knew about Roundup's cancer risk but failed to warn them. Indeed. Right, let's go on to this one because I want to play a piece from Kevin Annett following this piece. It's an update from Kevin. And another kick in the teeth for certain elites who think they can get away with everything. But this kind of story kind of amused me, even though it's not funny. It's the irony of it all. When people really delve into the depths of the Catholic Church, you'll get the irony in this. An independent Catholic Church, which specialises in demonic possession, is so busy carrying out exorcisms that you can now order the service online. Really. What's more, it's free of charge. Now that's a first for the Catholic Church. Perhaps they're getting a guilty conscience, who knows? Probably not. The Vatican News reports that the number of people seeking out exorcisms has tripled in a short time, and the demand is so great that the Catholic Church is scrambling to train more priests in demon fighting to tackle the backlog. Meanwhile, in California, a independent Catholic Church called the Order of Exorcists. It's not like California not to jump in, is it? Oh well. Anyway, they've risen to meet this demand and is even streamlining its service by offering an easy-to-use exorcism application form. Oh my God. I wonder who fills it out, the person or the demon that's possessed them. Really. And the order is, this particular order is not part of the Catholic Church, rather a branch of the faith, which is under the independent Catholic jurisdiction called the Sacred Order of Saint Michael the Archangel. It claims to have its roots in the ancient old Roman Catholic Church of the 12th century. Well, I think perhaps we need a global exorcism of all things related to Catholic churches. Then we have a real move forward, given it's largely them and their interaction with jinns and the Jesuit night crawlers. For those of you who've experienced that, you'll know exactly what I mean. The brown robed ones. And it's time maybe we shut them all down. And I'm going to play this piece now. This is from Kevin Annett and his latest update.
This is a message to those who call themselves Christians and yet who still attend churches that have blood on their hands, centuries of blood on their hands, the Roman Catholic Church, the Church of England, the United Church of Canada, or any church that has committed genocide, that has trafficked children, that continues to harm the innocent for profit. Do you really think you've escaped judgment simply because you've bought off survivors with settlements, that you've got the media to cover up these stories, that you have political arrangements to allow you to get away with these crimes? You haven't escaped judgment. Today, we're issuing this statement. It reads as follows. Since February 2013, the churches of Rome, of England, and of Canada have been convicted of unspeakable crimes against children and humanity and have been declared criminal bodies. It is now time for all people of conscience to leave these false churches, these murderous organizations that continue to threaten the safety of children. And so commencing at noon on Good Friday, March 30th, 2018, and extending to Easter Sunday, April 1st, and beyond, all people are asked to enter into 48 hours of prayer, meditation, fasting, and then to separate forever from the Roman Catholic, the Anglican, the United Churches, and all the other churches guilty of these crimes. During this period and afterwards, under the laws of God and humanity, all people are required to cease and desist from funding, from attending, or from associating with these criminal churches. Now we ask that people declare this intention to break away from these murderous organizations by taking this attached pledge of non-cooperation and sharing it publicly. And the pledge reads as follows. I, and then your name, acting in good conscience, do hereby pledge to disassociate from the church known as, and to deny it all attendance, funding, and adherence. I do so because of this church's criminal conviction as a genocidal, child-killing institution that has betrayed God and humanity, and thereby has forfeited all rights and authority. And then you're to sign it, date it, and leave this in the collection plate in these churches, or post it publicly in and around these church bodies. Now you can obtain copies of this by going to itccs.org. Versions of it in English, Italian, and French are posted right there on the website, itccs.org, or write to itccsoffice@gmail.com. That's the International Tribunal of Crimes of Church and State, itccs.org. There is a judgment coming.
That was Kevin Annett, and I've met Kevin. I'll probably be meeting him again soon. He's a fairly genuine man, and he wears his heart on his sleeve. And unlike many of the internet warriors, he actually goes and challenges people face to face. You know, he's been thrown in jail, faced all kinds of threats, and he still kept going. And that's what we need more of, a bit of courage. And also in these particular times, you'll realise why soon. So thanks for Kevin and his work, and we'll get on with more of the news. Where are we next? Opioid has been in the news a lot recently, and here's why. Opioid overdoses were up 30% in the last year across the whole of the United States. And this was a study by a federal agency that found that the US Midwest was the worst hit, with overdoses surging by 70%, 70. And this is according to the data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And the Vital Signs study tracked emergency room visits due to an opioid overdose between 2016 June 2016 and September 2017. The US opioid crisis claimed 63,600 lives in 2016 alone, and now it's up again. The CDC said tracking hospital visits was a more comprehensive assessment than counting overdose-related deaths, and stated long before we receive data from death certificates, emergency departments' data can point to alarming increases in opioid overdoses. Not good. That has to stop. We'll have another excess in the op-ed pieces later on. So the musical chairs in the White House continues, and the latest, which is fairly significant. Gary D. Cohn, President Trump's top economic advisor, is now laid out plans to resign, becoming the latest in a series of high-profile departures from the Trump administration. This will continue. It hasn't finished. And officials insisted there was no single factor behind the departure of Mr. Cohen, who heads the National Economic Council, but his decision to leave came after he seemed poised to lose an internal struggle amid a mild West-style process over Mr. Trump's plan to impose large tariffs on steel and aluminum imports. We'll have news on that in the intel. BlackBerry, don't hear of them too much anymore, but maybe this is why. On Tuesday, they filed a patent infringement lawsuit against Facebook Inc. and its WhatsApp and Instagram apps, arguing that they had copied technology and features from the BlackBerry Messenger. And litigation over patent infringement is part of BlackBerry Chief Executive John Chen's strategy, and he stated defendants created mobile messaging applications that co-opted BlackBerry's innovations using a number of the innovative security, using interface and functionality enhancing features. And they filed the lawsuit in a Los Angeles federal court this week. Los Angeles court's going to be busy with Monsanto and Facebook. This is a point of concern, and it should be noted, and it should be addressed also. A man in Seattle had his gun confiscated by police after breaking no laws. The police took his gun without a warrant and without pressing any charges in what is now known as the new red flag law. Really. And this has taken hold in other states also, and allows the courts and law enforcement to take away guns from individuals they deem are dangerous. And they've just begun the confiscation. A man living in the Belltown neighborhood of Seattle, Washington, became the first individual in the state to have his firearm confiscated without any formal arrest or charges. The man, who was not identified by authorities, had his gun removed, allegedly because neighbours complained that the man had been staring at people through a storefront window while wearing a holstered firearm. The pause was deliberate. He was not brandishing his weapon by any account, and open carrying is legal in the area, so he was abiding by the law. Other residents also complained that the man's open carrying made them feel uncomfortable and unsafe. Oh dear. He was roaming the hallways with a .25 caliber automatic, said Tony Montana, a man who lives in the same apartment complex as the gun owner, and a person without any reasonable gun knowledge. handguns are semi-automatic, as some people may or may not know. Most people in America will know that. But basically, a few complaints from neighbours allowed police to use the newly passed state law to confiscate the man's firearm because the man apparently stared at some others. Really? So basically, the police, if they receive a complaint, and or government officials are now allowed to violate a person's Second and Fourth Amendment rights, which are a basic fundamental human rights, and take their legally acquired personal property. If someone decides to make a complaint. But the question remains, and this is what bothers me more than anything, what if those people were told or paid to make that complaint? Don't think that doesn't go on? It does. It's setting a very dangerous precedent, and it needs to be addressed, and quickly. More he said, she said, and Donald Trump is coming under fire because he allegedly this week never signed the non-disclosure agreement that his lawyer arranged with the adult film star Stormy Daniels, and this is according to a lawsuit filed by Miss Daniels in Los Angeles. Even more busy. The suit alleges that her agreement to not disclose her intimate relationship with Trump is not valid because, while both Daniels and Trump's attorney Michael Cohen signed it, Trump never did. Stephanie Clifford, known professionally as Stormy Daniels, signed both the agreement and the side letter agreement using her professional name on October the 28th back in 2016, which was just days before the presidential election. Now, Trump's lawyer signed the document the same day. Both agreements were appended to the lawsuit as Exhibit 1 and 2. And on it goes. But I would like to remind people that this took place 12 years ago. It wasn't last week. It wasn't while Trump was president. 12 years ago. And the point is, this woman made a living banging all and sundry. You know, we had a term for that back in England. It was called a slapper. Now the woman with no shame wants to make a name for herself because she shagged Donald Trump 12 years ago. I mean, who cares? No shame that she was doing it to a married man. And to be quite honest, no shame for doing it with Donald Trump either. Most was on the other way. You know, this is a woman who's had more people inside of her than an old silver mining cave. And she's just there for her 15 minutes of fame. Why didn't she out it 12 years ago? It shouldn't matter. And personally, I don't care what Trump does in his private life as long as it's not with kids. It's nobody's business. You know, there's all these investigations of Trump and the team, like the one last week or the week before was his name Porter, who's alleged to have been abusive to his wife 13 years ago. I mean, why wasn't it addressed 13 years ago? Where was all the big investigations about the Young Boys Club in the White House that went on for at least 3 decades, if not longer? Where was the media then? Where were all the important people then? 8 years of Obama with no proof of citizenship, where were the portal people then? Idiot Bush Jr., cocaine trafficker, amongst other things. Where were those people investigating that? But they always overlook that, don't they? Clinton and her bed partner, I bed a human, or is it? Oh, that's right, humour a bedding. Nice anagram. Where's the investigation into that, given she was using the computer for state secrets? I think that's more important, finding out about Clinton's sexual engagements. And Trump banging some slapper 12 years ago. Who cares? An informant said today, this is the last of the news pieces, whom House Republicans have said could reveal a link between a 2010 sale of United States uranium suppliers and donations linked to the Clinton Foundation, provided no evidence of that during a 4-hour interview with congressional staff last month, according to the Democrats today. No evidence. But there's questions that are being overlooked in this, isn't there? If Russia's such a problem, and technically the Cold War is still on, as some would have you believe, why would you sell a key component of all things nuclear, or its most common use for militaristic purposes, uranium? So we must assume that Russia is okay based on that deal, because it did go ahead. But if the answer is Russia is okay, then why is there so many issues related to and blaming Russia? But if it's not okay, why hasn't Anne, her team, and Obama been arrested for treason? For supplying a so-called arch enemy. As the portal people so often state, a so-called threat to this nation. But those people sold nuclear or military-related materials from our country to them. Is that not trading with the enemy? You can't have it both ways. But it's another example of the merry-go-round of total BS news. Can't talk to the Russians on one hand, but you can sell them nuclear weapons on another. You just can't make this stuff up. They can. It's unbelievable. It really is unbelievable. Right, let's have a short break and then we'll go into the rather heavy intel. You may like some of this. What should we go with? Yeah, let's have this, because it's going to. Never mind. Right, Monday, first item of the intel. Monday brought about Operation Stupidity again. Yes, the clowns promised their fabled and legendary RV to their nightly memory-wiped minions. And yes, it failed again. I think I'm running out of words with them people. So that's what happened on Monday. I'm going to go through it as each day took place. Now, the next thing I want to do is make an apology. Why? Because I put out info that turned out to be subsequently wrong. Dickhead Cheney is still alive, unfortunately. And I had previously stated that he had died, and that was the info that came directly from the military at the time. But it appears now that may have been a double, but that was removed and not the original. Now the original is in hiding. Why? Because he has to. Next news item. Following the failed RV, the hiding Mr. Cheney and the Rothschilds were given a final ultimatum. Get on board and go straight. Don't interfere. Don't meddle with humanity. Go away. And yet again, they made the wrong choice and basically told us to go and F ourselves. Well, actions were then unveiled. Are you ready? So, following their blocking attempts, on Monday there was a number of transfers out of the Manor World Holding Trust, and the Cheney Group and the Minions and the Rothschilds blocked it. And this is now becoming a regular theme, which has took place since a week last Monday. The funds get released, everyone sees them, and these clowns come in and block it. So that happened on Monday. On Tuesday, the team made arrangements and capped off all the black market oil fields out of Iraq and cut off all their funding from it. Consequences of actions. Another attempt at transferring the funds was made, and they then blocked another transfer. So actions were taken for that misdemeanor as well, and the team arranged and burned the poppy fields in Afghanistan, cutting off another source of their funding. Maybe now we can no longer justify our military being there for the sole purpose of collecting drug money for black budgets and operations. Burnt. We're not messing around anymore. Enough of that delays. Afghanistan, we've been there for 17 years. It's one of the longest wars, if not the longest war. And bearing in mind, Osama bin Laden died back in December of 2001 of renal failure with Donald Rumsfeld at his bedside. Yes, that Donald Rumsfeld. Back in 2003, Bush Jr. said mission accomplished. So why are we still there 15 years later? Obama, Clinton did the staged event of the fake takeout of the CIA agent Tim Osman, more commonly known as Osama bin Laden, back in 2009. And yet no evidence was produced that that event took place. None. A fake video. There was no body brought back for analysis, as it was bizarrely buried at sea. And the people just swallowed that. You know, Osama bin Laden was a sandal-wearing cave dweller. Why would you bury him at sea? It wasn't naval. Rhetorical question, I might add. Any further blocking of the release of funds will have a retaliatory effect on their income sources. You were warned. Now we ain't messing. A further transfer was blocked again. And so the team struck a deal with the people of Zimbabwe to divert all funds garnered from the mines in Zimbabwe away from the Chinese elders and back to the Zimbabwe people. Oops. Next item. Wednesday brought more hacking and more failure, as was today's latest Operation Stupidity attempt, was tried and failed again. Now, the team also made 3 more transfers this week. Big projects. And those transfers have done all the clearing through the banks. And the banks are still holding it in a clearance account. Rest assured, we can see if that money gets moved or transferred at all times. No more dodgy black screens where they can siphon it out and not notice and put up mirror screens. So, when the RV didn't pay out today, they called the banks, the clowns, and are trying to get the banks to hold the transfers off until Monday, when I've no doubt they'll try Operation Stupidity again, which will fail again. So now these 3 transfers are for major separate projects, which is going to create a lot of jobs, good ones as well. And what these clowns need to realise is they are violating an executive order which Trump put out last week. That was a direct response to the blocking of the transfers. And if they don't stop, they will be facing military tribunal rather quickly. Where are we next? That pretty much wraps up the intel. There's a few more bits in here that covers some intel in a way. But contrary to a posted video this week, there is no fixed dates for arrests. Forget dates. We've all seen them come and go far too often. It's about as regular as the coming and goings at the White House. Some have already happened, and some are ongoing. That I will make clear. Also, in that particular video, we interrupt this program. Well, I'm not only going to interrupt that program, I'm going to trash it, because it sounds to me a bit like Roy Potter, who offered and delivered nothing 4 years ago and was exposed. Oops. Either way, what was stated in it is that no country will use the United States dollars after March the 7th. This is more bullshit, yet again. And now you know it's bullshit, and what the purpose of the bullshit, you'll realise that whoever was putting that video out is subsequently cabal and bullshit also. Because the reason they were stating that in that video, it was because it was an attempt by the clowns to scare people into accepting a Treasury Reserve note. This is just a straight replacement for the Federal Reserve note, which is debt instrument. And as for the other video, the Galactic Connection video or piece, one would have thought by now to ignore that BS. I'm sorry. This is the same woman who said she gets emails from the Prime Creator. I mean, you shouldn't need me to tell you to discount that now. And whilst we're on more BS. Some people want to connect all kinds of dots, none of which exist. So I will run off a list, and the mana base, mana blogs, mana cryptos, mana forums, mana pages, none of which belong to Kim or the Mana World Holding Trust. None of them. No connections, none. Suddenly Mana has become a household name. I wonder why. And snakes throw the name in to make you think it's part of something else. It's not. Kim and the Mana World Holding Trust is connected with this host and this group, and recently interacted with the RV people to educate them on all things reality, not the illusion. Now, she's also involved with the setting up and working with the Kingdom of Mana, which is a sovereign nation in the island of Papua New Guinea. And that is it. That's it. Nothing else. You know, the two shows well, 3 shows she's been on, were there, and there's another one coming up on Sunday. Plus an opportunity every week to ask relevant questions to this show, or concerns. We're always available, and yet there's a few who take up the opportunity to do so, only choose to complain on the page. Well, if you want answers, you have to ask questions in the right format. I haven't got the time to be answering questions on a nightly basis anymore. I used to, I don't now. A lot goes into this show, and we do have a question and answer section, although some weeks with all the news now, we're not getting round to it like we used to. But I don't think many people are complaining about the content of the show, regardless. Corrupt people have been leaving, and this is in response to the first video about people, mass arrests coming up. Corrupt people have been leaving and stepping down, all very quietly. You may be surprised at how many have done so already. It's quite a list. They're all giving you largely BS ideas of why they're leaving. They're leaving because they've been told to leave. We have the Fulcrum files. We know what they've all done. Some are worse than others. McCain, I told you he was going. He probably may not reach military tribunal because he'll probably be in a box before then. So, a message to the members, listeners, and the cabal. The time for going after the lower end minions is now over. We are now heading to the very top, and removals or eliminations will be coming. To the cabal, you have had long enough to go straight, and we, the 99%, have had enough, and our patience ran out. Your time will now also run out. And to Mr. Cheney, hi all and welcome back. That's the message now. We're not mucking about. We're going right to the top, and expect removals or eliminations will be coming. They're not going to stifle and hold back humanity any longer. They've had more than enough time to play fair and they've chose to play games. So you want to meddle with our plans, we're going to shut down your revenue sources. And this week, the Iraq oil fields, the Afghan poppy fields, and the mines in Zimbabwe all were transferred elsewhere. So see how you like that. And here's another one where it's going to hit them in their pockets. The new steel tariffs. There's far more about that story than meets the eye. Was it's another block on cabal corporations, not only in profits but also their cartel involved in that particular field. All those companies that now has to pay were not paying any tariffs. No surprise there. And there are rumours at this point that they've been selling weak steel to the military on purpose to then encourage them to buy from another different particular company. And this, I've yet to get a confirm on this yet, but I may do later. Maybe the news about the Japan steel company this week is related. So that's another hammer blow to the cabal. The Russian who died this week due to the nerve agent. This is the same Russian, for those of you who like to connect dots, who worked with and for the British MI5/MI6 agent Christopher Steele. Mr. Steele was the one who supplied the dossier of digging dirt on Donald Trump, for those of you who don't remember or don't know, which was all paid for by Anne, Android, or better known, formerly known as Hillary Clinton, and her team of assassins and criminals. No doubt there'll be repercussions over that. There's been rumours this week of the Dodd-Frank Act, is it? Or was it Frank Dodd? No, it's the Dodd-Frank Act. And this kind of mirrors it. In China, the bank regulator is easing buffers required for problem loans. And this is another incremental move to offset a crackdown on shadow banking. I think we've explained what that is numerous times. And more cash for lending will boost bank profits, especially at smaller institutions, or make it easier to bring off-balance sheet assets back on board. So this is, again, the shadow banking crackdown, and the off-balance sheets, as in offshore accounts and all the other stuff, is being made transparent in China. One particular word magic that came to me this week, and it's going to shock some, and this is surrounding ET disclosure. But the term disclosure, DIS, derives from disrespect, to dis. So ET disclosure is ET disrespecting closure. See why that's been pushed now? It's the ETs that wish to remain hidden, so they can carry on with their dark magic, aided and abetted by so-called ET disclosure groups. One day the real truth about ET disclosure and the blue chickens will come home to roost, methinks. A couple of more small items before I get into the 1, 2, 3 op-ed pieces on fear, religion and synths. And this is kind of alarming. I mentioned earlier about the opioids, but this is just as bad, if not, well, it is worse. And there's a report that came out today that the average American, as in one person, spends $1,800 a year on food, vacations, the children, healthcare. Nope. On alcohol. So a 2-parent family spends, and this is the average, $3,600 a year on booze alone. And yet many are saying they've got no money. You know, with that level of spending, which is, as I said, is an average spend, no wonder many people are struggling and have financial issues. That level needs to stop and to drop alarmingly going forward. When people realise the damage excessive drinking does to your PSI field, maybe some will have a rethink on that, on the damage they're doing and have done. Because that kind of links in with the exorcism story. They don't call it spirits for nothing. If you want more information on the PSI fields, for those of you who are new to this show, and the damage drink and drugs that does, all drugs, listen to the Humanity Unplugged 1 and 2 shows. Now the key is when you didn't know the damage, it was excusable. When you do know, you only have yourself to blame, nobody else. $1,800 a year per person on booze alone is excessive. Not good though. The Oscars awards, the self-congratulatory sycophants awards ceremony attracted the smallest recorded US television audience. Finally, people are starting to see through the illusion. Oops. And the live show averaged 26.5 million total viewers, which was down from 33 million last year. Big drop. So we have 26.5 million people watching in the gallery, like the Hunger Games movie, watching them lord all over us and expecting us to worship them like some gods and goddesses. Well, F that. That's what I say. What you got to remember is most of these people in these Oscar awards have zero talent. None whatsoever. Only a desire to sell out their own soul. And I mean that literally, not figuratively, in return for your worship and idolization. These people are lost souls. They're empty vessels. So why are we following them around? Well, 7 million decided not to bother anymore. Maybe next year there'll be 0 watching, because maybe they won't be around. It's time we cut them off and let them wallow in their own self-congratulatory stage shows. All done with a grand entrance on the red carpet. Why? To remind them of the blood sacrifice of the many people for them to stay at the top and lord all over us. That's basically what they're doing. TikTok to the lot of them. Utter parasites. It's when people find out the real truth about them. The fact that Henry Weinstein may have fiddled with some of them. There's a lot of them been fiddling with other people, amongst other things, and worse. That's going to be an unpleasant truth, finding that lot out. Alright, let's get into some op-ed pieces I wanted to cover. And the first one's to do with fear. And it affects all of us in different ways. But it affects Americans more. Why? Because you've had the fear program bombarding you from the day you were born. And what has happened now is people are starting to see through the first layers of the illusion. The next stage is to see the problem of where the illusion came from. The elephant in the room, so to speak. Now, as I said earlier, decades of fear bombardment on the American people's psyche has kind of left a large toll on the older generations. And that is not easy to shift. Fear PTSD is a bigger issue than veteran PTSD in this country. It goes in deep, it festers and consumes you to varying degrees. Now, fear can come in many different forms. I remember when I lived back in the UK, where I live, all of us had a fear of being robbed. The house being burgled, you couldn't leave the car outside unlocked. Heaven forbid the kids left the bikes outside, they'd be stolen within 5 minutes. And people left their homes on a daily basis, and I can guarantee before they left the road, all of them were thinking, have I locked the door? Did I shut all the windows? Did I turn the alarm on? Is the deadbolt on? It was a daily process. And heavy brain space consuming, and in essence a total mind effort on a daily basis. Now, some of the more worrying nature types added extra layers. Have I turned off the stove? Is the coffee pot on? Are the lights left on? Etc., etc. And this is the environment we have created for ourselves. That's not the cabal. Took me 12 to 18 months of living in Florida before ending that personal fear program. Have I locked the front door? Have I locked the windows? On and on and on it went. And fear is riddled in this country via the portal people. Of either some war is threatening to start, it's already started, or then it's escalating. Someone's always coming to get us here in America, be it the Russians, the commies, the Muslims, the Mexicans, nuclear bombs, African killer bees, some virus-laden mosquito, Ebola, H1N1, or some viral flu from times past. And now we have a new one, a new fear channel called the Weather Channel, who've decided to get in on the act. When a blowy day is now being described as catastrophic. 2 inches of rain described as a biblical deluge, and it just goes on and on. We had a hurricane, in inverted commas, last year. Oh, it's blowing everything down. And he's standing in the eye, and the trees are barely rustling. 15 mile an hour, up to 28 mile an hour. Fear. Again. It shuts you down. And they know it. But we can shut it down. And that's the key. It just gets repeated over and over and over again. Like what they used to do with the kids in school. I don't know whether they still do it. The nuclear drills, where you hide under your desk in the event of a nuclear bomb going off. Like, that's going to make a difference. A bit of balsa wood that's open-ended. That's going to save you from a nuclear blast. I mean, it's just fear. It's nothing to do with drills for the kids. It's a fear program. Exactly what it was. It's just like a stuck needle on a record player. It just plays over and over and over again. But they know this. They've perfected it with various heinous experiments done by largely the paperclip crew. Operation Paperclip. Yes, you, Mr. Mengler, and you, Dr. Green, up in Canada, and others. They know what triggers the brain in a certain way. And how it all plays out after the trigger is released. This is how they create the Manchurian candidates. Just needs one trigger. There used to be, there was a program in Brazil, I think it was. It was a South American country, and every time the Coke advert come on, all the kids in the program went completely nutty. That's how powerful the mind control can be. Just a simple advert. So once that trigger is released, and once the fear is delivered, how easily manipulated you can and then becomes the big issue. Because your thought process is then full to the brim in fear. It makes people insular, insecure, uncertain, frightened of change, terrified to speak. Sound familiar? Should do. In essence, fear is a partial to total body shutdown switch. But fear is often also part of our own making. Fear of not being as good as your siblings or parents. Comparative mindset is often caused by the fear of looking or feeling a failure. Fear of changing jobs. Fear of changing partners who may not resonate anymore. Fear of moving house, state, country or continent. Fear of speaking because you fear you may upset someone. A fear of heights when most people have never gone above a stepladder. A fear of going to court even when you're only a witness. Why is that? A fear of cops. A fear of having children and a fear of losing them. A fear of growing up and a fear of growing old. The list is endless, and many of you will see some of those examples in yourselves. And the outcome is it renders many unable to be themselves. Because some even fear themselves and their own shadow. But the key is to integrate the shadow, face it, and be at one with it. And remember, fears are a future event. So it's something that hasn't happened yet. So why would you want to manifest that fear-related event? Now, real freedom is for the individual to let go of your fears. Fear of what other people think about you. Who cares? Those fears were not real to begin with. You just made them real. And only a possible future event which you have the ability to change it. You've just forgotten you have that power within you. All events in the future can all be changed. So I hope that helps some. Religion. Came up with this analogy this week. It's like a fishing line with a giant hook, which you cast out from your body, essentially pulling the inner you out and inverting it. So everything is then outside of you. Your morals, your life force, for your praying, your power, the Lord, the God, the Jesus and the Saviour, all projected out along the fishing line. And as you reach out for them, and you give your funds away to them, your thoughts away, and your penance away to them, your sins they also take away, and then you get the hook. And many feel it's too late to turn back on your own church and temple. Well, I hope Kevin's message earlier rendered that mute. It's never too late. Many are frightened of turning away from it, as you may have felt you've invested too much time to turn back. But you're investing a lot more living the lie. It takes a lot more energy, a lot more muscle use to tell lies and live it, than to tell the truth and smile. So many are like a poker player in Vegas on a losing streak. Very few cut their losses and run. No, they keep going in the hope they strike it lucky. It rarely does, as we all know. For those who won't turn back are now faced with the reality all of you are left with is a controlled empty vessel, waiting for salvation, forever chasing the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. It never arrives. Maybe one day you'll realise it's you. You were the one you were looking for all along. You were the Saviour. Not the only one. One of all. You were the salvation. You were the power. You were the knowledge. And you were the God. As the God you saw was the reflection in the water holding the fishing rod all along. It was you. Never put anything or anyone above your own heart. That's the message for that piece. Right, let's get into the synths. There's a few who asked about it. and asked me to do a piece, so I did. Now, this is kind of an awkward piece for many, and I do get it. But you'll probably find that this piece is rather balanced. It gives you the choice of which way you want to go with it. I just supply the evidence on both sides, and it's your choice at the end of the day. But synths are soulless entities, a vessel without a soul. Now, these people are ambivalent to ongoing things. They film or observe and not interact or prevent with their phones. They watch violence and are not fazed. In fact, they appear to relish it. They have a lack of empathy, a lack of understanding. Their actions are robotic. So is their mindset. And all those ways are suggestive of it being a real depiction of a soulless entity. But can I say I'm 100% certain of it at this point? To me, it does look like a valid fact, but until we get the full facts supporting it, we can only base it on what we see or know at this point. Now, it's been said that between 70 and 90% may be synths. A rather large number that shocked many. And to me, the evidence supports it at this point. And this is where many people struggle with the concept, as it then affects those they hold dear to their lives. And I do get that. Now, back in May, I think it was May or June time of 2015, I've referred to this before, but it was a key statement made then. I did a piece on CV that I felt was right at the time to put out, and I spoke of dealing with your shadow sides and doing your inner work to be ready for the onslaught of what was to come. I think we've all seen the evidence of that foresight, but I also spoke gently at the time. You may see or experience some disconnect from friends, family and loved ones. For those of you with a long memory, you'll remember that. And basically I was introducing you to the possibility or probability, depending on your own choice, that would take place. Some things you have to introduce gently for people to process. And that's largely what we've done with this show. A steady but increasing drip of the knowledge, I feel, is the best way of delivering knowledge or the truth. And people say they can handle it, and then bam, up to pop the Svarley shows, and many revolted at it. It was too much. Now that must not be seen as a weakness, that you couldn't handle that portion of the truth, because that was a natural empathic response of those with organic souls. And yet when you tell others of it, they just shrug it and walk away. Is that a natural organic response? Clearly not. So the main issue of people struggling with the concept of synths is not the practicality of it, but your connections to those who exhibit the behaviour modes of those called synths. That is all that is holding some back from accepting it. Basically, it's an emotional attachment issue. And yet many who listen to this show will know, in the last 2 years in particular, those emotional attachments have been disconnecting at an alarming rate, even amongst our own group. Long-term relationships falling apart, be it marital, family or friends. Does that disconnect in a short period of time make any sense to the observer? Not when you analyse it, it doesn't. And so if it doesn't make sense, that then means something else is going on a wider scale or path. Now, like any good analyst or detective, when you've gone through all the evidence and the only thing left is the unpalatable truth, then you have a choice to make. Do you accept the truth even though it is limited in its base form, or go with the mass illusion and mask it? And these are the choices you've all been forced to look at in the last few years on many levels. So, at the start of this piece, with what we observe of these people's actions, ambivalent to ongoing things, filming bad situations or just observing and not interacting or preventing, watching and glorifying violence and are not fazed by it, a lack of empathy, understanding, robotic actions and mindset and ways, people dying, starving, suffering, and it phases them little or not at all. They all seem to think this world and life is what they like to term as normal. Well, if that's normal, it's not my world. I don't think it's anyone else's world that listens to this show either. And it shouldn't be in anyone else's world with a heart and an organic soul. And that's the key. Now, I suspect over this year, you will see a further increase in the separation of people, as more and more will seek like-minded individuals. Remember that statement. It could be you. Me personally, I can't imagine being with a partner and not being able to discuss possibly the most important time in human history. It's limiting and it's stunting your own development. Dragging people along who feel life is all just wonderful in a one-person closed-off bubble life is always great, until the time their bubble of life is popped. But by that time it may be all too late for them. So the evidence of basic human emotional behaviour with repetitive responses, reactions and thinkings all does point to something that's clearly not on our wavelength. How in a world full of hurt, anger, greed and violence do these people not feel anything, unless the mainstream media tells them to do so via a false flag event? Then the collective wailing party comes out for a day or so, and then back to bland life and thinking pattern. I can hear you all thinking aloud now, oh my God, he's talking about my blah blah. Yes, indeed. So the choice comes down to how much you tolerate in a relationship. What are you prepared to put up with? Does the other person value me for who and what I am? Or do they just ignore you? Too often, relationships become stale and we hang on in the hope that the other one changes. Some do, but the majority don't. Then it ends and you wonder why you put up with that bitch or that pig for so long. Or maybe that plays into the first op-ed piece. Fear. Fear of change. So I'll just tolerate this because I'm used to this. You should never get used to living in a limited, stifling, abusive way. Never. That's a lack of self-value and self-worth. No one should have to tolerate that. So, if you don't value yourself enough to warrant making the great leap of change, you're stuck in the same bubble, the same vibration. It's just dragging you down. And trust me, I know. I've been there. I had to end it. I couldn't tolerate it. So, we're either dealing with a biobot synth or a human so programmed into oblivion. Basically, they are a replicant of the real synths. Think about that one. So much so, it's almost indistinguishable. You can program a robot to show emotion, but you can't get them to feel the emotion when they are not part of the hurt group. Most will not want to know what happens. Well, assuming they're all synths, then as the organic overlays the inorganic world totally, they will phase out. It's a different frequency. Maybe a filtering will take place where a separation will occur on Earth. Time will tell. Either way, whether synths or a replicant, they won't be heading to the new Earth anytime soon or ever. So whether you believe in synths or not is your choice. And I hope this piece helps. Look at the evidence. Is that natural human behaviour? A lack of empathy, a lack of care, a lack of emotion, a propensity to glorify violence and stand there while cops shoot people and they stand there filming it so they can get it on YouTube for some attention. Is that normal human behaviour? I think not. The robotic manner in which they go about things. So whether they're a synth or they're programmed as a replicant of the synth, it doesn't really make any difference, does it? This lack of care and, the Vatican have raped X number of children. Don't talk stupid. Well, are you going to look at the evidence? No, it's BS. Says who? Well, it would be on the mainstream media. Really? The bastion of truth, the mainstream media, not. But I did warn back in November of 16, it got to a point then I felt we couldn't carry on attempting to wake them up. Some didn't like that, and I get that, and some of you have ignored it and carried on trying. But either way, whether they're synths or they're not, it's too late. It's too late for them to learn in a steady stream like you all have. Whether you've been listening to just this show or listening for 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 or 30 years. Imagine you coming into it now and knowing nothing except Kardashians and Britney Spears and Katy Perry. And isn't the halftime show at the superb Owl great? And learning about Bushes and Clintons and Obamas. That's just the lower end, believe it or not. It's not the top end, it's nowhere near it. You would literally go off your tree. It's too much. And that's why I said it's gone past the date. I knew the volume would increase in the information being put out. I knew the revealance would increase dramatically, and they have. And even some of the awake ones who've been following it for a number of years are struggling to keep up. Well, they have got zero chance. And the problem is, a number of them who may not be synths are frightened. There's that fear again of admitting they were wrong. Because not only are they facing the onslaught of all this truth and new information about this world is basically one giant lie, they're also facing their own guilt and shame, is that they shunned family members and friends and loved ones, calling us all lunatics or conspiracy theorists, which came right out of Langley, that term. That's where the term conspiracy theorist came from, Langley. It's exactly the same as the fake news meme, designed to get you to spin the wheel, where you don't know which is the truth and which is fake. Except overall, from the overview point of view, even with all their fake and their agents of deception, and yes, we know you're listening to this show, and we know you're in MeWe, and we know the names of the ones that are on the Facebook page also. Despite all your fun and games and your vast resources, you still failed. People are coming now, whether you like it or not. And there are people who are remembering who and what they are. Hi all, and welcome back to the final portion of tonight's show, which is Q&A. And it's going to be short because people complain they don't get answers, but they don't ask questions, funny enough, when the forum is available. Oh dear, oh well. Right, there's only about 7 or 8 questions. We'll get through them and we'll wrap up tonight's show. Of course, I'll be back on Sunday with Kim, or Miss Manna, she's better known as, on OYM. And the question, can the trust be used as a collateral asset by the people it was meant for, so that the people can issue private bills of exchange to be posited with the Treasurer of the United States of America as an asset for the equitable conversion in functional currency for the use of the issuer, or a letter of credit issued by the trustee of the manor trust? And now I can breathe. To the beneficiary of the people, or to be posited in the same manner? Not anymore, it can't. There'll be a lot more of the finer details coming out once certain things are completed. These are really, really busy times for himself, and even more so for Kim and the team. There's a lot of countries, in fact there's not a lot, there's all the countries that are completely bankrupt, as are the banks, and if that continues into next month, then we're all in trouble, because literally there'll be a shutdown. There's nothing left. So there's a big push now to get things fixed, and like I warned, March would be a key month, and it's certainly turning out that to be that way. We're only a week into it. Firings at the White House, a number of people stepping down, and a number of lawsuits, big lawsuits, taking place against Facebook and Monsanto. McCain disappearing, Cheney in hiding, and now the big boys right at the top are being taken down. They have to be, and they will be. What is going on with the fifth element? I'm not too sure what the fifth element is. I assume that's related to something else. Unless it's to do with ether. Also, I will say that's going rather well. If it's to do with that anyway. There's a number of terms for the fifth element. Something it's a rogue group. Something you could call the deep state the fifth element. And yet in the series V, the fifth element were the reptilians who worked against their own group and helped the humans. So there's a vast difference in what is the fifth element. What is going on with the E2 group you had on the show? Are they still in the mix? If so, what capacity are they helping? Well, the actual council are still helping. They're helping with the financial aspects, and a number of other things that I can't cover at this time. But eventually, when safe to do so, we do shows at fairly regular intervals that will update not only on the financial aspect, but on the ET aspect and the arrests aspect and the foundation aspect. But everything at the moment is about getting the funding transferred through and delivered to the countries who are in desperate need, or more desperate need. And there is a vast number of countries in desperate need at the moment. Venezuela just being one, Puerto Rico is another, Haiti is another. Most of the African countries are struggling because of the involvement of the old Dutch establishment, the De Beers. I suspect they're in the firing line also. Maybe we'll find out one day. But they're interfering in South Africa is not going to go down too well. See, the problem in South Africa, I need to mention this. I mentioned it on the MeWe, I think, is they're now talking about genociding the whites in South Africa and destroying all the farms, because it's the white people who own the farms. Now, this has previous, because we had family, or the ex-wife had family in Zimbabwe, formerly known as Rhodesia, which was predominantly white, and suddenly the apartheid finished, or was about to finish, and the blacks started reclaiming their land, except they didn't go about it in the right way. And I forecast that within 12 months that they would have a humanitarian crisis. Why? Because they killed all the whites. They were slashing families with machetes and shooting them and everything, kids and all. And not only that, they then set fire to all the land and all the farm equipment. And within 12 months, none of them had any food. And now South Africa wants to follow the same path. I'm not in any way, shape or form condoning some of the abuses the whites have dished out down, in Africa. It's wrong. It's wrong in any country. It just is. But the solution doesn't have to go from one swing of the pendulum to the other. The reality is a number of countries in Africa have not evolved. I know some people will get upset at that, but this is the reality and overview. They haven't evolved. Those people in Zimbabwe destroyed their own food. That's not correct thinking. And the reality is they need the input of the whites. And if the whites think they can do without blacks, you need to think again also. Because a lot of them can be hard workers, but there's cultures within Africa who just don't want to move forward. I'm not suggesting that they should go to the ridiculous lengths of moving forward as we in the Western world have, because there's obscene elements of the Western world. They certainly shouldn't be living in mud huts in this day and age. So they have to develop not only the land, they have to develop themselves. And the only way you can do that is by merging the two peoples together. The whites not lording it over the blacks and having big vast estates and wealth, where the blacks are living in poverty. That has to stop. And I hope the people of both colours in Africa learn to come together, because they both need each other, whether some like that idea or not. But the Bears people, bad racists. I remember when my wife went there for a wedding, she was horrified at the way they speak about the blacks. Horrified. It's just not a way to be. They're people at the end of the day, regardless of what colour or nationality. And yes, we mightn't like some colours, and we mightn't like some people of certain nationalities. It doesn't mean to say you have to tar them all with the same brush. Maybe the move and the intel piece in Zimbabwe may be a start. You know, the blacks are entitled to have proper homes, the same as the whites. Largely that country is completely undeveloped. Massive opportunities for growth in that country. Massive opportunities. Maybe the new destination for moving because of work in the future. There's apart from dotted towns here and there that have been modernised to what we have in the Western world, houses and shops and whatnot. There's vast swathes of Africa with nothing. They're still living basically in the jungle. Some corrugated sheets. You know, there's no need for that. I hope sanity prevails, but we are investigating whether there's off-world intrusion in all the African countries. And if there is, it will be dealt with. Why are we being told to watch the water? I have no idea. I saw that on QAnon. Perhaps it means questions and answers. None. Who knows? As America becomes sovereign and utilises the manner World Holding Trust funding I'm assuming that the Federal Reserve and their collection agency, IRS, will be dissolved. Let me address that part first. Yes, I'm assuming that also, but I also suspect that it will be phased out as we phase the new in. I could be wrong. They could declare it shut down overnight. Maybe it should, to make a statement that things have really changed, because if that announcement comes tomorrow, the Federal Reserve is closed down, and Friday, tomorrow again, the IRS is being shut down, that would send a giant message out that things have really changed. But I suspect there will be a phased shift. There's a lot of people who work for the IRS. There's a lot of accountants who rely on the IRS for employment. What's going to happen to all of them? There's always consequences. So we have to think of that when we say get rid of this and get rid of that. We have to reshape the landscape, so to speak, to accommodate the loss of those, whether it be corporations or shops or whatever, or government agencies. So there's a lot of discussions going on regarding that, and they've been going on a long time. When we get a definitive answer, then it'll go in the show. And then a new American banking system, yes, that is on the cards. Perhaps a much different country tax system will be initiated. Well, if the IRS gets dissolved, then yes, it will be. And I'm hoping it's a lot lower than it currently is now. When you consider that the country, apart from the last particularly the last decade, when you remember, I think when Obama came in, the debt was about 8 trillion, 7 to 8 trillion maybe, and now it's 20. Why? Because the trust fund got cut off. Well, you imagine all the income tax the American people pay suddenly going to the American Treasury and the American government, like it should have done for a so-called independent country. Then there'll be plenty of money. Imagine a lot of the top people removed that are using all kinds of slush funds, funds for this and foundations for that. Suddenly all those assets are put back in. It's been stolen off the people, all of it. And the CAFR accounts goes back to the states and not to be used as another slush fund, which then gets chunks taken out of it at different intervals, put on the stock market on a guaranteed interest, and the person who took it then walks away with the profits and puts the money back. So that's still to be revealed as well. They've been dipping into it for high yield hedge bets, which they know they'll win. Well, that interest belongs to the people, as do those accounts. So all that can go back into the pot. The fact that suddenly America's going to be competitive again. We can sell a whole load more of our own stuff. We can manufacture a whole load more of our own stuff and become self-sufficient. Something I mentioned back in CV. Personally, I think America needs to close its borders, cancel all trade deals, bring all the military back, and then clean house, and then reintegrate with the rest of the world who've done the same, where we get proper trade deals that's based on the people and not based on cabal cartels, where the money is then transferred amongst a range of people rather than them having their fingers in all the pie, which means they ultimately collect all the money and then there's nothing left. Well, that's not an economy. Is this what you and Kim foresee? Well, like I said, there's a lot of discussions going on how it should be dealt with. Like I keep saying, there's 489 different aspects of life that has to be addressed going forward. So money being one of them, banking, and America's only one country out of 209. It has to apply with all countries. The bar will also be dissolved. Well, yes, that can be done technically overnight. I think most lawyers will be fairly proficient-ish in sovereign law. It's fairly simple, even lawyers can get it. 4 rules. If there's no harm, there's no crime. You don't have to sit 7 years studying legalese babble to get those rules. What do you foresee happening to the alternative health medicine community, naturopathic, homeopathic? Currently, those have been outspoken and or seeing a lot of people getting restored to wholeness are mysteriously dying. Those promoting that and selling it, yes, they are. And this is the way Big Pharma works. And the lobbyists, they removed the problem. Well, now they're finding that they're the problem. And so we removed them. Medical is going to be kind of interesting going forward. There's been a lot of promises. Cash and Keenan and all kinds of other people promising. Jared Wren's another one. Medbeds and all kinds of machines that you walk in and you're 30 years younger and cell regeneration. And it'd be interesting to see how much of it is valid and how much of it was just bullshit. Do I know the answers to all of them? No, I don't. Have I seen a working model of any of them? No, I haven't. Cash promised this and 1 million machines back in 2015, 16. They never got delivered, did they? So until we can get clarity of what is real and what is not, then the alternative medicine will probably take a little bit longer if it isn't. Now, obviously, there are ways where you can set up shops that sell the alternative health and medicine and the various forms of cures that are available and have been witnessed as working. Then that should be, in a sovereign free world, should be wheeled out fairly quickly, and funding should be forthcoming for that, because it's for the benefit of all. And going forward, we have to sort out the health. It's criminal in this country where you lose all your life savings and your house and everything because you get ill or have an accident. That shouldn't happen in a civilized society. The NHS in Britain's not ideal. It's kind of become overbloated now for various reasons. But at least people get treatment. Sometimes they have to wait a bit, but they do get treatment. And they're not losing everything because they've had the misfortune of being sick. But the people who came up with that plan of the health insurance in this country were in need of urgent medical and mental attention, in my opinion. And the people should never have accepted it. richest country in the world, and people won't go to the doctor because it costs too much. The teeth are falling out because it costs too much to have them fixed. Really? That has to stop. So once it's evaluated whether Jared Rand's medbed is a valid thing and what it can do, then once certain things are cleared out of the way, then there's going to have to be a total re-evaluation of the whole of the health service, not only in this country but every country. If there's technology that does do the cell regeneration and it can put people back 30 years, then who goes first? The people who have got money again, or the people who have been struggling? All these things will have to be thought out. And will we need as many hospitals? Will we need more hospitals? Or will we need less nurses and doctors because we're using more technology? Or will we need more to cope with the backlog of providing perhaps people with free healthcare? Personally, I think a fund should be put forward for free healthcare for 10 years. So everyone who's had illnesses that haven't gone to the doctors, or teeth that are falling out, can be fixed free of charge or minimal cost, as a way of paying back the people for all the funds that's been stolen off them. Maybe that's something I will suggest. Thomas, the bank's corrupt courts are ripping families apart here in Ireland. I hope you have good news. When can we expect announcement of a major change in how the financial system operates? I'm not proffering dates. We've been let down with far too many dates before. But things, as it stands, look rather promising. But yet again, they were promising last January, so much so I left my job. And then they blocked it, and here we are, 14 months later now. And they're still blocking it. But what really has changed now is the patience is more out. And now they're going after the big boys. The minions have been largely negated. In fact, a lot of the minions that work for the paymasters are turning against them. The Zulu tribe was spoken to this week, and they have now found out the truth about what happened to their funds. And those people are not too happy with the certain families either. And maybe they'll chase them down as well. So there's a number of different groups now who are tired of their system and tired of their lies. So our team can sit back and watch, largely. But if they interfere with our business directly, which is what they are, then we now are acting on it straight away. Those incidents in the intel were within 24 hours. So maybe we will get an announcement sooner rather than later. I hope so, for everyone's sake. Can you give away any info about S-RCO? They seem to be involved in many things, and yet not many people are talking about them. They're now taking over the mortgage interest relief payments at the DWP. In other words, they are stopping it. Too long to go into it, but a cause for some concern. There's a company called S-RCO that appear to be a bit dodgy, and there's another company called Serco who are probably one of the largest companies that people have never heard of, and another one of those government organisations, quangos we used to call them, providing government services, but they're not really government services at all. So for those who've never heard that term, Serco, S-E-R-C-O, go and look up. They're vast and have gone largely unchecked. But if it's the other one to do with the money markets, I don't believe they're too good either, on the brief check-up on them before. There was thunder snow reported in the greater New York City area during the northeaster snowstorm on Wednesday. Was this reporting of thunder snow by the MSM a cover for something else? It sounded more like military jets. It could be, I don't know. Certain things, I can't keep on top of everything. There's that much going on now. It's quite a struggle. And then I remember, I didn't ask about such and such, and didn't ask about this, but you know, I'm trying to also allow them the time to do the work. You know, Miss Manor was up when I last spoke to her last night. She was in her 21st hour of being awake. Up at 1 a.m. in the morning, and I was chatting with her last night at 10 p.m. 21 hours. Still up. Because this is how busy things are. You know, so spare it a thought and for her and the team, because they're doing what is a massive change for humanity. Doesn't guarantee we're going to get the golden age, as it's been called. There's no guarantees in life. But if all of us work together towards it, that's the majority, then it will work. That's the key. Or are we going to replicate their system and become another mini cabal, secret societies and all the other nonsense? If you're going to allow ego to take over and greed to take over, where the opportunity, there's loads of money swimming, I'm going to become a millionaire, if that's your only goal in life, then you might as well have stayed a sleeper, in my opinion. Someone earning $1 million a year means there's thousands who have nothing. If everyone earned $50,000 a year, then everyone would have everything. Certainly what they need, anyway. Right, I think. Well, that's. I thought I'd gone on long with it. It's shorter, tonight's show. So I've been told the fifth element is the media, the portal people. They're collapsing in on themselves visibly. Behind the scenes, it's disintegrating at a rapid pace. And maybe we might have some more familiar faces on the TV, spouting truth instead of bullshit. Going forward, we'll see. Right, I'll be back on Sunday with the OYM lads at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Remember, in America, the clocks go forward an hour, in most regions, I think. And so you are not late or early or whatever it is. I can't think now. Spring forward, isn't it? So it's spring here in Florida. It's a bit cool today, though. I know how you all love the weather reports up north. And in the UK, for that matter. It's freezing over there. So I hope you've enjoyed the show. Intel there. That's continued the theme of the recent weeks of steady but assured progression. But those people, the cabal, now know we're not mucking around anymore. We're hitting them where it hurts, right in the pocket, and those pockets have vast holes in them now. And very soon, there's not going to be any pockets left. Right, I'll be back on Sunday. I'll be back next Thursday with the normal show, unless there's something major in between to report. There's always that possibility now, as the information and time condenses into a very small gap. Where are we next? What shall I finish with tonight? I haven't played this in a while. Right, this has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. Bye for now, and I wish you all well.